We all know about the term one trick. Whether that knowledge comes from our favorite streamers, friends, or just the community in general, it's a real thing. This term is often used as an insult in a modern day ranked game. Because I hit Challenger while being a Nunu one trick, I definitely know this as a fact. So if it's not respected, why do people subject themselves to what sounds like such a boring way to play the game? I figured that with my perspective, it's fitting to take upon myself the task of explaining why one trick ponies exist. First off, let me start by identifying what exactly makes someone a one trick. The main way to be considered an OTP is to almost exclusively play one champion. This exclusivity can mean having around 90 to 99% of your matches on a single character. Take me for an example. If I'm playing ranked, I will always pick Nunu. If I'm first pick, Nunu. If the enemy team's picks all individually counter my champion, I play it out. If Nunu's banned, I dodge. If Nunu is picked by the enemy team, I dodge. If I can't play Nunu, the game isn't worth playing. And well, that's how most one tricks feel too. Why though? The obvious reason is because it's their favorite character. I'll put this in perspective. When the average League of Legends player is thinking about the game, they're just thinking about playing League. However, when a one trick thinks about playing League, they're thinking about specifically playing X champion. So if by any means your champion is not available for you to play, there's not really a reason to, unless you're playing ARAMs. Best game mode ever. Attempting to rationalize this might be difficult, but to put it in perspective, would you order from McDonald's if you knew your favorite order was discontinued? The other way to identify a one trick is if they play significantly worse off of their champion. When all of your time is invested in learning the ins and outs of one character, you become very exceptional at playing them. As Malcolm Gladwell said, it takes 10,000 hours of practice to achieve mastery of a skill. However, this time sink leads you to be underexperienced on other characters, and it's as if you're relearning the game. A Yuumi one trick will play horribly if they pick a character like Thresh. However, there are some exceptions to this rule. A player who one tricks Yasuo could still play well on Yone as long as that player has put some time into Yone as a pocket pick. This makes sense. Yasuo's core champion design is similar enough to Yone's for this player to potentially have some transitional skills that they can implement into playing that champion. Meanwhile, a Yuumi player would absolutely carpet bomb their LP if they tried picking up Thresh, considering these two champions have very different kits and playstyles. Does this mean that all one-trick ponies are bad players? Yes and no. The obvious proof would be looking at players like Yasuo or Tyler1. But in general, there's pros and cons in terms of what one-tricking a champion does to your overall skill. So let's establish them. Pros of being a one-trick. You cut learning process time, you understand the ins and outs of a single character, and you understand the ins and outs of why other characters are good or bad against yours. You're also forced to learn niche game knowledge in order to min-max your playstyle that you would never have learned until much later on otherwise. The cons of being a one trick. Only being very proficient on one character, having a much lower chance of winning off of that character, being insulted for your chosen one trick pony lifestyle, and limiting your overall potential growth of skill as a player. It is generally easier to achieve more ranked success if you only commit your time to learning one character only, rather than 3 or 4. However, of course, if your pick is countered, you have a much smaller chance of winning considering you don't have a backup character. So at that point, it depends on how often your one trick is picked in general. Let's look at this graph that Riot posted from Season 10. It's pretty confusing to read, but I'll break it down. The word at the bottom of the chart, breadth, represents how many people play that champ, while the word on the left side, depth, is how many people play that champion a lot. So for example, if in Season 10 you were one-tricking Ezreal, Lux, Lee Sin, and most predominantly Yasuo, you had a higher chance of being punished because of it, considering people generally play these champions a lot in the first place. Meaning, since a lot of people play them, a lot of people learned what and how to play against them for the most part. However, if you were a Skarner enjoyer, the only thing limiting you was how weak your character was. But if all that time you put into Skarner made you really good on that character, it was probably hard to play against you since no one had a reason to learn how to counter it. It is kind of a circular argument though, because this does not mean that Skarner OTPs have it easier necessarily than Yasuo OTPs. Yasuo is overall a better character. You have high damage, high mobility, outplay potential, and obvious synergies. This all means your mechanical skill ceiling is really high, much higher than that of Skarner. But because of Skarner's lack of options, no high damage, no overwhelming mobility, and no outplay potential, Skarner players must learn how to carry in much different ways. For example, learning advanced macro play, like setting up and securing objectives, pressuring the right lanes at the right moments, and identifying win conditions. These advantages are what I call a secure build. You can meticulously stack dragons over the match, creating a secure foundation for your team, meaning your options are opened as the match goes on. The enemy team will have to contest the 4th dragon because if your team gets it, that's the soul. However, at that point, you could just give it away for free while your team takes Baron. While a fed Yasuo is more like a Jenga tower. He stacks a bunch of kills, increasing his 1v9 potential, but if he dies, there goes a 1k shutdown and the tower collapses. Now, with all of that being more clear, why does the general League community hate OTPs anyway? What makes them have a bad rap? In simple terms, all League of Legends players have massive egos. That includes one-trick ponies. If a Katarina OTP hit Masters, they'll have the subconscious thought that they are a Master Rank player and not a Master Rank Katarina player. This idea ends up leading to scenarios like the following. You may be using apps like Porofessor or BlitzGG to scout information. This may then lead you to find out your mid laner is playing Zoe, even though they have 99% of their matches on Katarina. They will obviously not play as well as they would have on Katarina, and the fact that combined with your brewing hatred within your heart will make every decision you see that player make look 10 times worse than it actually is. This may lead you to subconsciously give up on the entire match before the result of it is distinguishable in any way. In my past, there were scenarios where Nunu was banned and I wasn't able to dodge because I already used all of mine for that day. Then my team would give up right away, leading us to obviously lose, then type things like never play off Nunu again, as if their mentally predetermined L wasn't a contributing factor. Let's be honest, whichever side you were on, we've both been in that situation before. With the pros and cons fleshed out, what is the actual reason one-tricks exist? Well, there are two reasons because there are two types of one-tricks. There are circumstance one-tricks and there are true one-tricks. The main reason people like to play only one character in the first place is because they really enjoy the aesthetic and gameplay style of that specific character. So what happens when that character is so unique that no other character is like them? You don't play anyone else. Sometimes it's just fate that decides your favorite character is Yorick. After you realize this, no other character really comes close, and this is how circumstance one-tricks are bred. Champions like Nunu, Katarina, and Bard have a high density of OTP players because of the fact that these characters are extremely niche. The scenarios where circumstance OTP characters are meta picks are very uncommon or even non-existent. This is because these characters aren't competitively viable to keep within a normal player's champ pool. There's a reason you never see junglers ever casually pick Nunu unless it's to run it down. Why play Nunu when you can play Sejuani, Zac, or whatever the meta picks are? Basically, there's no reason to touch these characters in the first place unless you like their aesthetic and gameplay niche. If this player connected with a more meta common character, they would be likely to just main that champion but still play other characters instead of becoming a one-trick. Meanwhile, true one-tricks are players who only play one champion even though their character has clear similarities to others. The perfect example is what I've referenced earlier, Yasuo. Yasuo is extremely similar to Yone, yet some players genuinely only want to play Yasuo no matter what. They'll treat it like any other OTP and not care about playing unless they can play their one champion. So if they have other options, why do they stick with their champ anyways? This reasoning can range from their interest in the near infinite skill ceiling to the feeling that they've committed so much time to one character that there's no reason to stop, or because they straight up like their aesthetic and gameplay more than anything else, even if there are large similarities with their champ and others. Overall, for the most part, the types of players who we refer to as one-tricks in League of Legends would have most likely been one-tricks in any other competitive game they've ever played. I think at the root of the phenomenon, it just comes down to what type of person you are, and that's it. For example, I one-tricked all my life. In Mario Kart, I only used Shy Guy once I unlocked him. In Mortal Kombat, I only used Reptile, and in Pokemon Emerald, I always picked Trico as my starter. Whether or not one-tricking is something that damages the integrity of the ranked ladder in League of Legends is up to speculation. All I know is I'm part of that potential problem. I mean, someone has to buy the Song of Nunu Collector's Edition. Thank you so much for watching my take on why one-trick ponies exist. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, you should check out my other videos. See ya!